"Don't touch that." The flight attendant's voice sliced through the quiet like a blade, just as Lena reached for the service button. The 13-year-old girl flinched and pulled her hand back. "Sorry, I just wanted some water." The tall woman leaned in, her eyes scanning Lena's white dress and flats before locking onto her freckled face. "First-class service is for first-class passengers. You understand?" Lena nodded slowly. "This is my assigned seat, 2A. A dry, tight-lipped smile appeared on the woman's face. "And yet here you are, alone. No guardian, no record, no water." She turned and walked away, heels clicking softly on the aisle carpet. No apology, no explanation. A couple across the aisle exchanged glances. "She didn't even raise her voice," the husband whispered. "Yeah," his wife muttered back. "That's what made it cruel." Lena didn't say a word. She sat up straighter, eyes locked on the perfectly folded white napkin in front of her. She pressed her palms into her lap to stop them from shaking. She didn't cry. She didn't complain. She didn't beg. Have you ever seen someone get humiliated in silence and nobody stepped in? Tell us where you're watching from. She turned toward the window, watching the golden sunlight stretch across a sea of clouds. Calm skies, fake peace. What no one knew, at least not yet, was that just beyond the curtain separating first class from the private executive suite, a man had been watching everything. Her father, Ethan Caldwell, chairman of Altavox Holdings, and the very man who held controlling interest in the airline that just humiliated his daughter. He didn't say a word. He simply took out his phone and tapped once. From the outside, it looked like nothing happened. Ethan Caldwell didn't raise his voice. He didn't step into the aisle or call the attendant over. He simply tapped his screen. That tap sent an encrypted ping through a closed internal server, one that connected directly to NorthJet's executive oversight protocol, known only to 3 people in the world. Ethan was one of them. Within 60 seconds, a red level alert triggered at NorthJet HQ in New York. Within 90 seconds, an emergency compliance team was activated. By the 2-minute mark, the CEO of NorthJet was already on the phone. Inside the jet, Lena stared out the window, unaware of the ripples she'd set in motion. She pulled her hoodie over her head, retreating inward. Her throat was dry, but she didn't bother pressing the button again. Behind the curtain, Ethan took a long, deep breath. He had built companies, negotiated billion-dollar mergers, and rewritten trade policies. But nothing made his hands shake like watching his daughter sit in silence, denied basic decency. His voice was low but firm on the call. "This isn't a service issue. This is a failure in ethics. I want that crew flagged and replaced the moment we land." "Yes, sir, but the lead attendant's been flying with us for 18 years. Ethan cut him off. "Then it's 18 years too long." Meanwhile, the cockpit received a subtle redirect. Divert to Denver International. No explanation given, just high-priority rerouting. The pilot didn't ask questions. Orders like that didn't come from customer service. They came from someone powerful enough to rewrite the rules mid-air. Back in 2A, Lena leaned her head against the cool glass. She still didn't know what her father had done, but for the first time since boarding, the air felt heavier. Something had shifted. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We've just been instructed to reroute. We'll now be landing at Denver International instead of LAX." The cabin shifted with tension. People glanced at each other. Murmurs rippled like static. Lena lifted her head, confused. "Denver?" The flight attendant, her flight attendant, froze in the aisle, tray halfway to a passenger. She blinked, then set it down on a nearby table, her face tight. Behind the scenes, the flight crew started exchanging messages on their internal comm system. Denver wasn't part of the flight plan. There'd been no weather alerts, no emergencies. And yet, they were descending. Back in the executive pod, Ethan Caldwell stayed silent, still watching. At the front of the plane, the lead flight attendant brisk walked into the galley and locked the door behind her. She picked up the service phone and called the cockpit. "Captain, what's going on? Why the change?" The response came back flat and professional. "Red directive override. Ground won't say why, but it came from upstairs, very far upstairs." She hung up slowly. Her face paled. In row 2A, Lena pulled down her hoodie, her nerves tightening with every word passengers whispered. "What do you think's happening?" someone asked. "Medical emergency?" another guessed. "No, this feels different," said a third. "Like a corporate thing." The truth was, it was both, personal and corporate, and about to become very, very public. As the plane began its descent, Lena felt something she hadn't expected. Relief. Not because she knew what her father had done, but because, for the first time, it didn't feel like she was invisible. And across the aisle, a woman who had watched the whole thing unfold earlier gave her a slight nod. Like she knew. Something was coming. The moment the wheels touched down in Denver, the tension snapped. Passengers expected the usual slow taxiing and polite announcements, but instead, the seatbelt sign stayed on longer than normal. Then came the unusual one. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. Authorities will be boarding shortly for a routine inspection." That's when everyone knew this was no routine flight. The flight attendant who had refused Lena water tried to keep her cool, but her hands trembled as she collected service trays. She avoided looking at row 2A. 2 federal compliance agents entered the cabin within minutes of docking, quiet, in suits, with tablets and earpieces. They didn't say much, just walked straight to the galley and asked for the lead attendant by name. She stammered. I'm not sure what this is about." One of the agents replied evenly. "You will be escorted off the plane for an internal compliance inquiry. Please gather your belongings." The entire crew exchanged glances. The co-pilot, pale and stunned, asked, "Are we being replaced?" Before the agent could answer, another call came through to the cockpit. The captain stepped out with a grave expression and said, "Everyone, disembark, now." "But we're mid-flight crew," one attendant argued. "We have a return leg." Not anymore. Lena, still in her seat, watched it all unfold like a slow-motion movie. She turned toward her dad across the aisle. He hadn't moved, just calmly closed his tablet and stood up. As the flight crew walked out, silent and stunned, Ethan finally made eye contact with the lead attendant. His look said it all. This wasn't personal, but it was justice. And it wasn't over. Lena blinked, overwhelmed. She didn't know her dad had the power to shut down a plane or fire an entire crew mid-route. But now she realized, he'd done it for her. For the first time, the humiliation she'd felt was slowly turning into something else. Vindication. By the time Lena and her father walked through the private exit at Denver International, the story had already gone viral. Someone had filmed part of the exchange, the crew being escorted off, the agents, the silence. The clip was only 20 seconds, but the caption was enough to ignite a fire. "Girl denied water in first class. Entire crew fired mid-air? What just happened?" Within hours, #Flight 231 was trending. By morning, it had a name. The Watergate Flight. TikTok blew up with speculation. Reddit threads dissected freeze frames. A body language expert on YouTube said the father's posture alone oozed silent power. But it wasn't until someone doxed the flight attendant that the tone shifted. Her name, her face, her LinkedIn. Even a photo from 5 years ago of her in a Halloween costume that, let's just say, didn't age well. She posted an apology video. Eyes puffy, makeup running. I didn't know who she was. I didn't mean to. I've been under so much pressure." The comment section was brutal. "You didn't need to know who she was. She's a child. You looked at her and made a judgment. Don't blame stress. Ma'am, you denied a kid water. Just own it." Still, not everyone agreed. A small wave of voices questioned the response. Did the girl's dad really need to fire everyone? What about the crew members who didn't do anything wrong? Lena didn't read any of it. Her father made sure of that. But she felt it. At school, at the grocery store, even in the airport the next day. Whispers. Recognition. The kind that made her want to disappear. The worst part? She hadn't even posted anything. She hadn't said a word. But now, the world had turned her into a symbol, and she wasn't sure yet if that was a good thing or a trap. Lena sat cross-legged on her bedroom floor, the lights off, only the glow of her phone lighting her face. She wasn't reading comments. She couldn't. Not anymore. But the notifications still buzzed. Mentions, reposts, DMs. People tagging her in videos like she was some kind of social justice mascot. She didn't want to be brave. She just wanted to drink her water in peace. Her dad knocked once, then opened the door slowly. He didn't say much, just sat down beside her. "I didn't ask for any of this," Lena muttered. "I didn't do anything." "I know," Ethan replied. "They keep saying I'm spoiled, that you're using your money to punish people." He let out a quiet breath. "They're not completely wrong." Lena looked at him, startled. "But not for the reasons they think," he continued. "You remember 2 years ago, that flight to Toronto?" She frowned. "Yeah, you missed it. Work emergency." "I didn't just miss it, I was pulled off it." "What?" Ethan's face darkened. "Security assumed I was a risk. I was wearing sweats, carrying too many tech bags. They didn't recognize me. Told me to step aside, then canceled my boarding entirely." He looked at his daughter, voice steady. "No one apologized. No one cared." Lena stared. "You never told me that. I didn't want you to grow up thinking this was normal." There was silence between them. Ethan placed a small glass of water in front of her. "You weren't just denied a drink. You were reminded, without words, that some people still think they get to decide who matters on a plane." Lena held the glass, heart heavy. "I fired them," Ethan said softly. "Not because they messed with my daughter, but because they messed with someone's daughter and thought no one would care." That night, Lena cried, not out of anger, not even from shame, but from the weight of understanding something she hadn't seen before. By Tuesday morning, the headlines hit harder than expected. "Billionaire fires entire flight crew over a glass of water." "Entitled heiress or ethical wake-up call." News anchors debated it like a sport. Some praised Ethan Monroe for holding people accountable. Others warned of billionaire overreach and cancel culture in first class. Even Lena's school got media requests. One reporter stood outside their gate. "Do you believe the crew deserved it? Did your dad do this for justice or ego?" Ethan didn't flinch. He declined every interview. But Lena could feel the pressure closing in, like static in the air. At lunch, one of her classmates slid into the seat across from her. "Yo, your dad really shut down a whole airline crew like he's Thanos?" Lena blinked. "I didn't ask him to." "Yeah, but you didn't stop him either." That night, she finally asked her dad the question that had been eating her alive. Was it too much? Ethan was at the kitchen counter, reviewing emails on a tablet. He paused. "Maybe," he said. Lena was taken aback. "But too much," he added, "is sometimes the only thing that gets noticed." He set the tablet down. "Do you know how many quiet complaints airlines bury each month? How many kids are humiliated? How many parents are told to just let it go?" Lena stayed quiet. "Power," Ethan said, "isn't just for status. It's a tool. If I can make the next crew think twice before disrespecting someone who doesn't look important, then maybe it was worth it." Lena wasn't sure how to feel. She didn't want to be a symbol, but maybe being silent meant staying part of the problem, and maybe her father's silence all these years had finally ended for her and for everyone else who'd been told to shrink. 3 days after the incident, Ethan Monroe received an official notice from the FAA. Subject: inquiry into mid-flight dismissal of flight crew status. Escalated to Federal Compliance Division. Lena watched her father scan the email without a hint of surprise. "So they're coming for you now?" she asked, leaning against the kitchen doorway. "They're coming for answers," Ethan replied. "Big difference." It didn't take long. A federal agent showed up at his office the next morning, cordial, professional, clipboard in hand. The questions were measured but firm. Did you override a flight operation system? Was there coercion involved? Do you currently hold equity or veto power in any aviation contract? Ethan answered calmly, with full documentation. He wasn't worried. What did surprise him, though, came 2 hours later. An encrypted video call, private, from a group of aviation compliance officers across 3 airline boards. The man in the center, gray suit, tired eyes, no-nonsense tone, spoke first. Mr. Monroe, you just exposed a gap in our entire ethics protocol. Ethan raised an eyebrow. That wasn't the goal. No, but you made it impossible to ignore, the man said. Do you know how many times crew complaints get buried just because the passenger doesn't have your last name? Silence. We need a new system. One with real-time accountability, not just PR statements. Something like ethics scoring, cabin behavior tracking, passenger treatment audits. Ethan folded his arms. You want me to help you build that? We want you to lead it. Ethan didn't answer immediately. In the back of his mind, he thought of Lena, quietly crying over a cup of water, of the flight attendant's face when the authorities came, of the system that let it happen. Later that evening, he told Lena everything. They want a full framework, not just for passengers, but for crew behavior, response time, conflict escalation. Everything. Lena blinked. So, not punishment, but a standard? Exactly. And you'd be in charge? I'd co-author it, but I'd demand teeth. Financial consequences for non-compliance, real transparency, public scores. She nodded slowly. Would it help people like me? It's designed for people like you. They sat in silence. Outside, media coverage had begun shifting tone. No longer just about a billionaire dad. Now about what his actions revealed. A broken system, and a window to fix it. For the first time in weeks, Lena wasn't hiding behind a hoodie. She stood on the edge of the auditorium stage at her school, hair pulled back, posture stiff, but eyes focused. It was a small student-led forum about ethics and respect. Lena had been invited as the girl from the flight. At first, she said no, then maybe, then yes. Now she was staring at a mic. One teacher gave her an encouraging nod from the back. Her friend Mia mouthed, "You got this." Lena took a breath. I didn't ask to become some story, she started. I didn't ask for cameras or hashtags or to be called spoiled or brave. She glanced at the crowd. I asked for water. I was tired. I was polite. I was ignored. The room was silent. And then, I was humiliated in front of everyone. Not because I raised my voice, but because someone looked at me and decided I didn't matter. A hand went up in the back. But didn't your dad kind of overreact? Lena didn't flinch. He reacted the way every parent would, if they had the power. That landed. The clip went viral that afternoon, not because it was perfectly worded, but because it was raw, real, unrehearsed. She asked for water. They gave her silence. This isn't about class, it's about dignity. Let kids speak. Lena Monroe just did. News anchors played it. Celebrities reposted it. A well-known senator even called it the most honest statement in this whole mess. And behind the scenes, airlines were watching the markets. 3 carriers who had supported the NorthJet crew now faced boycotts and refund demands. One brand lost a major ESG investment. Another was trending for all the wrong reasons. #crew karma. Meanwhile, Ethan was deep in the design phase. His team now included ex-FAA advisors, diversity consultants, and even a data scientist from Stanford. They called it AORA, Airline Unified Response and Accountability. Its core, real-time ethics dashboard for crew behavior, passenger treatment scoring, anonymous complaint tracking automatic escalation protocol based on severity. And this time, it wouldn't just sit in a file cabinet. Ethan had already negotiated with 2 federal transportation committees. If AORA worked, It could become a mandatory standard for all airlines accepting federal subsidies. But he was also clear on one thing. Lena's voice came first. "She's the reason this system exists," he told the team. "Don't design it for investors. Design it for the kid who doesn't know anyone's watching." At home, Lena watched the numbers climb on her phone. Millions of views, thousands of comments. Some cruel, most supportive. One stuck with her. "You turned humiliation into a blueprint. Respect." That night, she walked into her father's office. "You said power is a tool, right?" Ethan looked up. "Always." "Well, I think we should use mine too." He smiled. "What are you thinking?" Lena held up her phone. "I want to speak. At the Aura launch. Not as your daughter, just as someone who sat in 2A and got told no." The launch of Aura was held in Washington, D.C., inside a sleek, high-security conference hall just a few blocks from Capitol Hill. Press badges were scanned. Industry CEOs adjusted their ties. 2 U.S. senators took their seats in the front row. It was a national event now. Lena stood behind the curtain, heart pounding in her chest. She wore a simple navy dress and white sneakers. She didn't want to look like a billionaire's daughter. She wanted to look like herself. Her dad gave her a nod from backstage. "Speak like you're not trying to impress anyone," he whispered. "Just speak." The host introduced her with a brief recap. "You may know her from the viral flight incident that sparked this reform, but today, she's not a headline. She's our opening voice." Applause, then silence. Lena stepped into the spotlight. "I'm not a policymaker," she began. "I'm not an expert in aviation. I'm just a kid who got thirsty on a flight and was told I didn't belong." She let that sit. "People ask me what I want now that everyone's watching. Do I want revenge? Fame? Control?" She looked around the room. "I want fairness. That's it." A few people nodded. But it wasn't until her next words that everything shifted. "If respect has to be earned by how rich your dad is, then the system's broken. Not just the airline. The whole thing." The room froze. A senator slowly lowered his coffee. Lena pressed on. "This isn't about one flight crew or one airline. It's about everyone who's been told they don't matter just because no one's afraid of losing their money. Aura isn't a tool to punish people. It's a reminder that every passenger is a person first." There was silence. Then, slowly, applause. Then, a standing ovation. Even the reporters in the back were clapping. One leaned over and whispered to another. She just wrote the next decade's worth of travel ethics. Later that afternoon, footage of Lena's speech aired on major networks. Within 12 hours, it had been viewed over 19 million times. More importantly, it triggered immediate action. 3 airlines announced they would pilot the Aura system within a month. By Friday, the FAA announced an emergency review of existing passenger complaint protocols. A bipartisan bill was introduced the following week to mandate digital crew evaluations for all federally certified flights. Ethan hadn't planned for it to happen this fast. "Your daughter just gave half the Senate a conscience," one consultant texted him. Back at home, Lena sat curled on the couch, scrolling through her mentions. "You went viral again," Mia messaged. Lena replied with just 3 words. "This time matters." That night, Ethan tucked the final version of the Aura Charter into a folder. He looked over at Lena and said quietly, "Most people build systems for control. We built this one for dignity." Lena didn't respond right away. Then, "We didn't just build it, we started it." And this time, she meant we. Flight 4285 from San Diego to Chicago was supposed to be routine. It was the first commercial flight equipped with Aura's real-time crew monitoring system, quietly installed just a day before. The airline had agreed to test it under non-disruptive conditions. No press, no drama. But at 9:47 a.m., 13 minutes after takeoff, the system flagged red. Inside the cabin, a Latina woman in row 17 had politely asked for water. The flight attendant, a middle-aged man with 30 years in the skies, frowned. You people always ask for extras. Wait your turn." A woman nearby, an off-duty nurse, stared, stunned. So did a student seated by the aisle. Aura didn't need anyone to file a complaint. Using voice recognition and situational tagging, the system recorded tone, facial tension, and keywords. In under 10 seconds, it flagged the interaction as hostile service behavior, discriminatory context. At 9:48 a.m., the alert hit the airline's Ethics Compliance Center. By 9:51, FAA observers monitoring the pilot program received the same ping. At 9:52, the flight attendant's profile was auto-flagged across 3 internal dashboards. The pilot was discreetly informed. No chaos, no loud confrontation, just accountability. Finally. Meanwhile, across the country, Ethan Monroe was in a meeting when his phone buzzed. Aura. Critical alert. Discriminatory behavior detected. Flight 4285, status, active escalation protocol engaged. Ethan didn't speak. He just turned his phone around for the room to see. The room went silent. Back on board, the crew member was quietly replaced from active service upon landing. The woman from row 17 was greeted by a representative and offered a direct apology. She didn't raise her voice. She just whispered, "I've been flying for 20 years. No one ever apologized before." The story didn't go viral right away. But by nightfall, screenshots of the alert system leaked to industry insiders. A headline on aviationinsider.com read, "AI just called out a flight attendant before a passenger could." By morning, 5 more airlines requested Aura briefings. For Lena, it was surreal. She wasn't on the flight. She hadn't seen it unfold. But when she saw the alert summary, something clicked. "It works," she said. Ethan nodded. "It begins." In the background, FAA officials were now debating making Aura, or a similar ethics AI, mandatory for all domestic carriers by next year. The quiet revolution had started. Not with shouting, but with something far more powerful. Proof. It was supposed to be just another industry conference, suits, slides, and sound bites. But the moment Lena Monroe walked onto that stage, the room shifted. She wasn't an executive. She wasn't a regulator. She was a 15-year-old girl in a plain black dress, standing beneath the glowing banner that read, "National Aviation Ethics Summit," presented by FAA and global carriers. She'd been invited to deliver closing remarks. It sounded ceremonial, polite, but nobody expected her to speak the way she did. She looked out over the crowd. CEOs, journalists, union leaders, engineers. Her voice was clear. No stuttering, no fear. 2 months ago, I was denied a glass of water. A pause. And now, here we are. A few quiet laughs. Nervous ones. My dad did what most people can't. He made one phone call and got a whole crew fired. Some fidgeting in the seats. A few tight-lipped executives. But let's be honest, that's not the point. She glanced down at her note cards, then set them aside. This was never about firing people. It's about dignity. The kind you shouldn't have to own an airline to receive. Now they were listening. Power shouldn't be the only language these systems respond to. That's why Aura was created. Not to punish, but to protect. Everyone. A beat. Then, I didn't ask for this. I just wanted to be treated like a person. Lena looked directly at the front row, where FAA directors sat, flanked by corporate reps. You have the power to make this permanent, to make sure no one else has to trade silence for safety. She gave a half smile. I'm 15. I can't pass laws. I can't sign contracts. But I can ask you, don't let this be a one-time headline. Let it be the baseline. The room was still. Then came the applause. Long, standing. Not just polite. Real. 2 days later, the FAA announced the Passenger Ethics Framework Act. mandating all commercial carriers implement ethics-integrated AI within 18 months. Aura was adopted as the foundation. The media called it the Lena standard. Lena just called it fair. At home, she sat beside her dad on their porch. "You changed the rules," Ethan said quietly. Lena shook her head. "I just asked a question." "Now it's your turn. If you were Lena, would you have stayed quiet or spoken up? Tell us where you're watching from and drop a comment below. What would you have said on that stage? And hey, if this story made you think twice about how we treat others on flights, hit like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more true-to-life telltales that spark real change. Let's not just watch stories. Let's learn from them.